Welcome back, everybody. You're watching Starting Point. Our next guest was a close confidant, one of the most famous men in the world. She was an executive assistant to John F. Kennedy Jr., his gatekeeper in personal matters and business matters during the last 5 years of his life. She's written a new book. The book is called Fairy Tale Interrupted, a memoir of life and loss, love and loss. Her name is RoseMarie Terenzio, and she joins our panel. It's nice to have you. I love this book. I thought it was really... Why now? Great. I mean, you were his executive assistant from 94 to 99. And then he died, of course, in 1999. Why all these years later do you write a book?
I had done an interview in 2009 about John's charity reaching up, and there was sort of a renewed interest in, you know, what was it like and how did you get the job and so I was approached again, and I thought, you know, enough time had passed that people would be willing to hear my story and not their story, because I didn't really want to tell their story or write a biography of John. So
a lot of your story
my experience, my fairy tale interrupted. Yeah,
and it's kind of, you often go back to how you come from very different worlds.
Yes.
Here you're this chick from the Bronx who drops the F-bomb, by the way, all over this book.
And high five.
And he is John F. Kennedy Jr., who comes with all this history and clout.
He dropped a few F-bombs here and there, trust me.
So what was it like to work with him? I'm sure
it was amazing. It was exciting. It was, it was nerve-wracking. Sometimes you have all these people, you know, who want access to this most famous person, and then you have to accommodate the people who have access to him.
So it sounded like he had a good sense of humor. I want to show
everybody. He had a great sense of humor, and he loved to tease, and I think he actually put gum in my hair once.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Seriously?
I swear. I had to go to the bathroom and cut.
Did you punch him?
I used to pinch him.
As somebody who really misses George Magazine, and I really think that George Magazine was way ahead of its time when you consider the era of Obama and at least talks of being post-partisan. George was really ahead of its time.
Yeah, I just wrote a piece on that for the Huffington Post about how Gingrich is still shaking it up. George Clooney was one of our cover people, and he's so politically active and civic-minded.
Yeah.
And
a lot of this book is about George and sort of the behind the scenes of how George came to be, and how at times it seemed like it was very unlikely that George might come to be.
Yeah, and now, I mean, even going back to the Gore-Bush campaign and the hanging Chad and all, it would have been so relevant, I think, today.
You also talk in the book about Carolyn and the pressures of paparazzi and being in the public eye.
Let me run a little clip, because I wrote a piece of the book. In page 179, you say this. JFK Jr. was dismissive of her complaints about being upset by the paparazzi, and they're attacking her, saying, quote, "It's no big deal, just don't pay attention to it."
Yeah.
Was this a source of contention?
I think you know what it was, too? I think a little bit of it was John not being able to protect her and feeling like, you know, it was like kind of a guy thing, where it's like, oh, like that's the worst thing that's ever going to happen to you. Don't worry about it. Move on.
He also grew up with it.
Yeah. Right. I mean, he grew up with it. It was new to her.
Yeah, it was. But I think his thing was just do what I do. You know, follow my lead and you'll be fine.
Right.
But for women, I think it's different. You know, when you read in the paper, you know, she was starting to kind of get used to it and kind of joke about it. And she'd call me up and say, "So, am I fat, pregnant, or anorexic today? Which one is it?"
Which one? It must be. It's Monday. I must be having the baby.
I must be, or I can't have children, or I'm pregnant, or I'm fat.
That would be the tabloids for you. Let me ask you a question, because
for women, that's a lot more.
It kind of cuts deep.
Yeah,
I can say that from a little bit of personal
And
experience.
they don't say that about men. Like they don't say, "Oh, he looks fat." They never say that.
Yes, they do.
No, they don't.
Never. I got to ask you one last question, because you write about you were some ways the reason that Carolyn got on that plane.
Yeah.
Because she was upset, and you said, "Listen, the wedding, it's a family thing. You got to go. Don't fight about it later, but this is a wedding."
Yeah, and I think I'll always regret that I had that conversation with her. I don't feel responsible for what happened, but I do, you know, I do regret that I and he tried to convince her to go.
RoseMarie Terenzio. The book is called Fairy Tale Interrupted. I love this book. It was great.
Thank you so
And as I was reading it, my daughter was like, "Can I read it later?" And I said, yes, if you ignore
black out the
all the F-words.
Right.
Because girl from the Bronx.
You make it sound like a Mammoth play, my God.
A little.
Thank you. There you go.
It is. It's just like a Mammoth play.
Or a Sam Jackson movie.
Straight ahead this morning. Thanks for being with us.
Thank
We
you so
appreciate it.
much.
Stay ahead.